Hey everybody, welcome to Breakfast All Day. Matt, Christy, Alonso. Outfest has been going on this week, so I have not really had a chance to see much in the way of new movies, except it happened that my night off was the night of the all media for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino.
But who's counting?
No,
Why is
we're
that
not
a question mark? Is there
well,
some mystery
because
film
look, Kill Bill was released as 2 movies. He's claiming it's 1, but you know,
I think Kill Bill is 2 movies.
I do
totally
too.
Kill Bill.
But that's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. And it also doesn't count his contribution to 4 Rooms. But anyway, we digress. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Anybody want to?
I will.
Okay.
So it is a love letter to a point in time, a very specific point in time, but also sort of a heightened, romanticized version of that point in time. A time of flux in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. There are so many 50th anniversary celebrations going on, you know, there's a ton of moon landing stuff going on. And this is around the time 50 years ago of the Manson killings here in Los Angeles. And into that milieu, we follow the story of Leonardo DiCaprio, who is this aging, fading Western star named Rick Dalton. And Brad Pitt is his longtime stunt double and best buddy and like kind of only friend, like does all his schlep work. And but the two of them seem to have a really nice kind of symbiotic relationship. They need each other. They enjoy each other.
What do they describe it in the movie? More than a brother, less than a wife.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's about how Rick is trying to stay relevant in this town. And at the same time, you have Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie. And her star is kind of on the rise. It's all looking kind of great for her. She's married to Roman Polanski. She's making movies. She's an up-and-comer as Rick is on the decline. And it's a snapshot of a period in flux in this town, in this business, where an old-school kind of Hollywood glamour is going away, it's fading, and a younger and edgier and earthier and kind of more dangerous creative vibe is finding its way into LA in 1969. And it's just long, languid stretches of like people talking on movie sets and hanging out. And there's is it a TV show he does with Timothy Olyphant, or is it a movie?
It's a pilot.
There's a big, long section that takes place on the set of this Western pilot. He had come to fame, Rick Dalton, as a star of a TV show called Bounty Law. And because this is Tarantino, he just luxuriates in recreating the texture and the energy of this kind of television show and what people looked like and what the clothes were like in this era. It's so funny. There was so much coverage of the transformation that occurred here on Hollywood Boulevard and all around the Cinerama Dome, you know, to make it look like 1969 in LA. And then they kind of don't spend that much time there. It's just like it's the backdrop for these two guys to go drive down the street and listen to music in their car. But because it's Tarantino, he obsessively, methodically, authentically has to recreate the look,
right,
the design, the clothes, and all that. And so it's what happens in this summer, and that's it.
I mean, yeah, it takes place over the course of a few years. They jump ahead a couple of times, and yeah. You know what a lookbook is, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
When a filmmaker sometimes is doing, especially for period pieces or sometimes with science fiction or whatever, they'll create a lookbook to kind of give an idea of like, here's what the movie's going to look like. Here's what we're trying to capture. Like Curtis Hanson famously had this amazing LA Confidential lookbook.
Oh, cool.
With all these like old gossip magazines and vintage Hollywood, this and that. And that's how he got the movie made. And I feel like the lookbook for this is probably more interesting than the screenplay. Like, because yes, I love all of the art direction so much, and the costuming, and all the milieu creating, and the song choices,
right,
and yeah, the how much he loves like old spots for TV shows, like what old commercials looked like. All of that shit, I revel in. Like I'm about Tarantino's age. I share a lot of his interests. I adore all of that stuff. And then you have the movie. And the movie is about white middle-age obsolescence, which is a bold topic for a white middle-aged filmmaker to address. But he does not want to see it all the way through in ways that I'm not going to get into because that's spoilery. But he does not... He lets everybody, including himself, off the hook a lot, and it bothers me.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the ending still. It's going to be very divisive. Perhaps at this table.
Perhaps.
But among audiences in general. It's a lot of fun for a long time. It's a warmer and more affectionate movie from Tarantino than we usually see, whereas it is like a lot of slam bang violence and a ton of language, and there's an intimacy and like a nostalgic kind of wistful vibe throughout. And then things change. That's all I'm going to say.
I have mixed feelings on this movie. The best thing I could say for this movie, there's 5 or 6, 7 scenes in this movie. There's at least 4 scenes that are just riveting. There's some amazing just scenes that happen in this movie that
Julia Butters.
She's amazing. The little girl in the Western. She's amazing.
Who's also on American Housewife.
No, the scene with the scene where they're fighting, right? Like that, not the scene like just offset, right, with Bruce Lee. Like that scene
so funny.
I found that scene to be terrific.
But it's also like a certain brand of white guy fantasy.
Well, okay, but I found what I think the best thing this movie has going for it is that unlike the last couple of films where it feels like
Tarantino films,
Tarantino's been doing like he's got his ending in mind, and so he writes his way to it. This one he actually created characters. He created characters. They talk to each other, and in a lot of cases, the characters kind of dictate where they go. Right, like the scene with Bruce Lee and Brad Pitt's character doesn't really drive you to the plot that much, and that's okay because but it's this great like kind of scene based on a little bit that we already know about him, and it kind of pays off. And there's a few scenes, and a lot of it is it's definitely Tarantino's love letter, not just to Hollywood but to filmmaking and being a filmmaker and being someone in the business. That the scene where Sharon Tate goes to watch her own movie, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's one of the best parts of the film.
It's one of the best parts of the film, and Tarantino seems to be clearly sharing his like, this is what it's like when you have a movie and people react to it and how awesome it is and it's magical. And not from a place of like ego, like it can be magical, right? Like
and pride too.
And pride, but also like
curiosity.
As much as look like I get that it is about middle-age obsolescence, but I found it also to be this really interesting story about two guys that are friends that both of them are kind of manly enough that they can't really like own up to how they feel about each other, right? And there's a monologue. It's like, well, there's nothing else you could do but get, have a real big drunk about that, right?
Right.
And look, that relationship between Rick Dalton and his stunt double, there's a certain amount of Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham in that. There's a certain amount of Clint Eastwood in the character of Dalton, like the TV star that went into movies.
He did spaghetti westerns,
right?
Yeah. And the thing is, but even before spaghetti, like right, and like the World War II movie is clearly somewhat of an homage to Where Eagles Dare, where it was like the body count of Nazis is so over the top.
And that feels also like an Inglourious Bastards
a little bit, right? But
too.
like,
I will say this movie has one of the great Chekhov's guns I've ever seen.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Although, well, I have issues with the payoff, but again, that would be a spoiler.
But
so I can't talk about it.
right. I think this movie does a nice job of exploring a friendship between two characters, two dudes that are like manly dudes, and it also shows us, 1969 is that point where old Hollywood and new Hollywood, like there is a switch there, right?
Yes.
Like you've got the way that things were done, and then it ushers in, like around that time, we start to see the new Hollywood.
Well,
Which
it's all the post Easy Rider stuff,
right.
basically. Yeah.
And all those like suddenly everybody's an auteur in a way that they hadn't really been before, but it also kind of maps to the change in society because you've got these damn hippies, as they put it,
Right.
like ruining everything. I found everything up into the climax of the movie fascinating and really engrossing, and then it just kind of takes this left turn into like, oh, like I guess you had this idea and you had to work it in there. But a lot of the other stuff, like the other one where Brad Pitt takes her home,
Margaret Qualley
takes Margaret Qualley
back
home
to the Manson Ranch
and goes to the Spahn Ranch.
Yeah.
That scene is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like
you have no idea what's going to happen.
You have no idea what's going to happen, and it's almost it's got elements of being a Western, but it's also, because a lot of Westerns don't necessarily do this, even though the fear was at any moment things could erupt into violence.
Right.
And it's really, really a nail-biting scene. So I think there's a lot more good than bad here. But like the ending, I feel like...
Look, I would say this. It is worth seeing. It is
on the screen.
It is.
Absolutely.
I enjoy the performances a great deal. Like I said, I loved everything I looked at and felt like I could touch was amazing.
Robert Richardson shot it. We should mention. So it's creamy and gorgeous.
But it's also like, I mean, Tarantino can do interesting stuff with female characters, and he can also be super shitty with them. And he does both in this film.
It's funny, there's a scene where Margaret Qualley, who is this Manson chick, and she's been hitchhiking, and Brad Pitt keeps seeing her on the street. And the third time he runs into her, he like finally, starts talking to her. And she's leaning into the passenger side, the open passenger side window of his car. And each time it cuts back to him looking at her, her ass is like a little more in the air, and the camera's like a little bit more up her denim shorts, to the extent that like we're giving her a pap smear essentially by the end of it. But that's one example though of like him depicting women. There's a whole foot fetish thing going on through here. There's a bunch of time where we just follow Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate walking down the streets of Westwood in an itty-bitty mod miniskirt and go-go boots. And, like, she's stunning, and, like, who can't take their eyes off of her? But it does feel a lot like objectifying her. And yet, what that leads to, the scene of her going to, is it the Bruin or the Fox?
I think it's the Bruin.
One of those theaters in
Bruin.
Westwood,
Yeah.
where she watches herself in this film, is such an affectionate depiction and a look at like what could have been, like a wistful, optimistic look at what could have been with this lovely young woman. And that feels like a far more respectful depiction of women in here. Yeah.
However, do not see The Wrecking Crew because it's terrible. I have seen it. It is not a good movie.
Poor Sharon Tate.
But Sharon Tate's great. We love her. So I just even before the finale, which for me was also kind of I had some issues with it. I've always had issues with Tarantino's pacing, and I'm sure he's doing it on purpose, but I find a lot of it to be just overkill. And so there are a lot of driving shots and stuff in this movie where I'm like, okay, we get it.
Although the geography is correct, though.
The geography is correct.
Gotta like that.
But there were moments where it's like, where are we? What are we doing?
Well, what's every bit of Tarantino film in that regard, right? Like, it's languid and it's talky and it's indulgent. So if you like that,
if that's why you like him, then you'll like this. I mean,
that.
Look, I get it. Like I like Death Proof a lot, although people think that there's way too talky. But yeah, this one I was sort of like, where can we get on with the thing? So. Yeah, I'm decidedly mixed about this, but it is, I mean, for the tour of 1969 Hollywood, that's worth the price of admission.
And there are, if you do love Tarantino, there are lots of little self-referential bits. I mean,
God, yes.
Between the casting of, Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, and then you have like the offspring of the stars of previous Tarantino films. You got Rumor Willis and Maya Hawke, who gets like one line. I'm like, oh wait, come back. It's Maya
Hawke. And Harley Quinn Smith actually is one of the Manson girls.
Oh, and Lena Dunham is a Manson girl. It's insane. Right. The stunt casting here.
If you're going to see one movie about the Mansons this year, watch Charlie Says.
Oh, I like Charlie Says. That was good. So, but some characters do indeed say the words Charlie Says in this movie. I liked it for a long time. And I guess this is what he does, right? He inspires this kind of conversation. You can't just say, it was good or it was bad. There's so much to chew on for so long afterward. And, you might end up changing how you feel over the course of it. I was never bored. I know you think it was too long and the pacing is slack, but I was always curious to know where it was going to go next. And sometimes that pacing issue pays off, like in the scene within the TV pilot of him and Timothy Olyphant, Leonardo DiCaprio. This might be DiCaprio's best work ever. He gets an enormous amount of range to show here. He gets to be funny, which he's not funny very often. But then there are great depths of despair as he's coming to the realization that, he's got serious problems and his career is in the tank and he drinks too much. Like you see it all, and he's so great.
Yeah, a case could be made that actually DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are both maybe giving their best performance.
Brad Pitt's amazing, and there's a scene where he climbs up onto the roof of DiCaprio's house to fix the antenna, and just like pulls off his shirt. Like, yes, Brad, you can do that. That's fine.
But again,
but there's a knowing nature to that moment, and to so much of this.
Absolutely. But there's also like within what we like. There's a flashback involving Brad Pitt's character that is that like, oh great, let's be toxic about women,
and that's meant to be a joke, like a running joke through the film.
Yeah, but it was a chewing on tinfoil joke for me because it just it didn't sit right with me.
Yeah. But we enjoy it. I mean, I'm glad I saw it. I might want to actually see it again.
No, I think this is better than his last 2 or 3 films.
It's better than Hateful Eight.
I think it's better than Hateful Eight. I think I liked it better than Django. And I think it's tighter and features what Tarantino's good, like the dialogue and the character work in this. I think it's better than Inglourious Bastards too. I think that this is some of the best character work he's written since Jackie Brown and Pulp Fiction.
I would agree with that. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think Inglourious Bastards is interesting because of the way that it keeps changing who the protagonist is, which is the movie does a little bit of that here. There are.
Let me say it this way. I think Hateful Eight and Inglourious Bastards are as much exercises in filmmaking and like what can I do and what can I execute here. And there's some of that in Django, whereas this one, the showcase is really the dialogue. And I think, or at least if not the showcase, like I think this is back to what really put Tarantino on the map, which is dialogue and character work. And that's some of the best stuff he does, and it's some of the stuff that he does better than a lot of other people when he's on. And this is kind of a throwback back to why, like, oh right, this is a filmmaker to watch.
I do think that his obsession with show business and show business history is used to much better avail here than in a movie like Pulp Fiction, where I felt like it was often coming out of the mouths of characters who would not be as show business obsessed as Quentin Tarantino.
Here it makes sense, of course, because it's within the business.
Yeah, there's a context.
I liked it, and I don't usually want to see a Tarantino film again, but this one I actually would like to go see again. I'm saying 7.8.
Yeah, I'm close to where you are. I give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I said 6.5 just because there were a lot of things that did not sit well with me, but a lot of it does, and a lot of it is lovely and well thought out and well crafted. The craft, I would say, is most of what this movie has going for it.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll see it. Of course, you're going to see it. And make up your own.
Yes. Our number is a 7.3. It is at 87% on the tomato meter. That's a bit of a drop. It was in the low 90s for a while, and now it's like mid 80s.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and do check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. It's where we do our TV recaps, talk about trailers and other movie news. And hey, we're constantly running into people who are like, oh my God, I loved What the Flick. What happened to you guys? So if you have friends who were into What the Flick and don't know about Breakfast All Day, please tell them. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching.
This is what happened to What the Flick.
Exactly. Boom. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.